You're listening to the Wired for Impact podcast.
I wanted to ask you about Marxism. One of the things where I'm seeing it most pervasive is in education and academia. I have struggled to try to alert people in academics. I have children in school, they're being taught, and I have not been able to really break through and have the administrators understand the riptide of wokeism that they're in. They have no bearing as to what's actually happening. This is what I was saying earlier too about the Marxism and you as a teacher. I think there's a lot of teachers that are being used as tools in the Marxist swell. How do we awaken them? How do we help them see that this is a larger agenda here and not just an ethical trying to keep things fair, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of ways to go about it. I try to go about it in every way possible. This is very interesting what I've come to conclude about Marxism, actually, that it's actually these huge giant corporate players, they don't want a free market. They don't want laissez-faire. They don't want competition. So I think these huge players, in conjunction with the state or the government, if you will, they actually promote this because they benefit from it. It does a couple things. It promotes the idea of a monopoly, and it supports their belief in, well, it keeps a lot of people out of the competitive realm because it figures everything as exploitative and all that. And also it gives people this sense of defeatism, that there's no way you can advance in this society under these class conditions and all that kind of stuff. I actually succumbed to that a bit myself when I was a Marxist. I thought, well, there's no way I could, I was doing pretty good as a professor, but, I thought, my position in society and everything was fixed by virtue of the fact that I was kind of like a worker. Some Marxists scoffed at that when I would say I was working class, but the one way is to wake them up to the idea that this is actually in the interests of the biggest dogs in the game, the bankers and so forth. That's one approach. The other approach is that it's wrong, that their premises are flawed, and to show them how they're flawed. The third thing is, I think, is more structural and big scope. That is, I think biggest problem here is the fact that you have the state funding all these institutions. So you get all these people in these roles who are effectively statists, and they're basically wards of the state, if you will. And they're rent seekers who don't work in the competitive realm. And they don't want competition, these people. I know this because that's why a lot of people become teachers and professors. They don't want to compete in an open, fair and free competitive marketplace. That scares the hell out of them. They don't want it. They want a secure sinecure that's handed to them. And so is to show them that. But I would say cutting all federal funding to these institutions would go a long way of getting different types of people into these jobs. And that would also, I think, affect the kind of ideology, the ideological promulgation that's happening in the institutions. If you had less statists in there, then they wouldn't be teaching this stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that's very subversive that's been introduced through the pedagogy, as they call it, pedagogical theory. People like Paulo Freire, that these teachers are raised on when they go through college and graduate school, if they go to graduate school, all this stuff, all these pedagogical approaches, a lot of them are deeply informed by Marxist thinking. So these people are they're being brainwashed into this stuff.
Right. So that's what I'm talking about. How do you break through that? I think a very real tactic that you spend a lot of time talking about is the diversity, equity, inclusion, and how that's infiltrated academia. Can you talk about how that has Marxist element in it and how that would eventually push towards a Marxist culture?
It's a translation of Marxism into identity terms. So so you always have in Marxism, you could look at it, there's an oppressor and an oppressed. So there's this dyad, this oppressor-oppressed dyad. So they drain this of its economic content and they put identity content in it. And this becomes a battle between the identity, the oppressor is now a certain identity group. That's white, straight males usually. and the oppressed are all the others. And so they believe that that's the struggle that's going on in the society. So, you just have to show them that it's not the struggle. There isn't a particularly systemic structural disadvantage given to people of color or women at all. It's just not true. Not now. There was, of course, and those were all state policies. So I think you show them that particular construction, that configuration that they're looking at is just a false binary that's not, it's just not, it doesn't hold water. But in my case, how did I get out of it? I think might be illustrative in terms of how people break out of the spell. For me, it was really being traumatized by the left.
Yeah, tell your story about.
Yeah, when
how you got canceled.
Yeah, when I started to tweet criticisms of social justice and DEI and what I called liberal fascism, when I started tweeting about that, I was tweeting anonymously, but I was calling myself the anti-PC NYU prof. And so a newspaper reporter thought, wow, this is unusual material, ideas and stuff to be coming from an NYU prof. And I realized that too, because I thought to myself one day, if I start talking as an NYU prof, the things that I'm saying, all hell is going to break loose. And So she interviewed me. That interview appeared 2 days later. I was coerced out of the campus, condemned by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group for saying the things that I'm saying now.
Mm-hmm.
Very many same things.
That it's fascinating to me, and I appreciate someone like yourself who still has the gumption to lean into truth, try to figure out what the truth actually is, and not feel and not succumb to the pressure. Because I imagine you were put under immense pressure.
Oh, tremendous pressure, and not only pressure, but also they moved my office to a different department. They moved me to the Russian department out of my own department. Isolated me, made me a pariah on campus, basically tried to make my life untenable there.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it very, very tough. So this kind of marginalized me, get me out of the way. That's what they wanted to do.
Did you ever feel threatened physically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There was a case in which Antifa, whatever you want to call them, of New York, Antifa NYC, wanted to kill me. So that wasn't good. Yeah,
that keeps you awake at night, I'm sure.
If you talk about the free market and freedom and liberty to speak your mind and free speech, all of a sudden they call you a fascist and stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems a little ironic.
Yeah, because they're actually they're the people that are actually violating people's rights. They're the people that are actually infringing on your right to life and everything, just your freedom of speech. They're actually fascists. That's the irony. It's the most bizarre twist.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wired for Impact. If you're interested in creating and expanding your impact, be sure to visit us online at impactnow.com.